The door of the cafe opened with a soft chime as a young woman stepped inside, her shoulders weighed down with fatigue that seemed older than her years. The smell of fresh coffee and warm pastries filled the air, but instead of comfort, it only heightened her nervousness. She clutched a tray in her hands, trying to steady her breath as her eyes darted across the room, searching for an empty seat. Every table was taken, filled with people lost in their own conversations, laptops, and phones. She lingered for a moment, hoping someone might notice her and offer a place to sit. But no one did. Some patrons avoided her gaze, pretending not to see her standing there. A few glanced up briefly, only to give a slight shake of their heads before returning to their screens and coffee cups. The tray trembled in her hands as she shifted her weight from one foot to the other. A flush of embarrassment crept across her face, her lips pressing into a thin line as she forced a smile that no one cared to notice. The hum of laughter and clinking cups around her only made her feel smaller, like an uninvited guest in a world that had no room for her. Her heart sank. She felt invisible, unwanted. With her throat tightening, she turned slightly toward the door, ready to leave, thinking it would be easier to walk away than to continue standing there, exposed and unwanted in a cafe full of strangers who refused to make space. At a small table tucked in the corner, a man sat with his young daughter, their simple meal spread between them. The little girl swung her legs beneath the chair, humming softly while nibbling on a cookie, her bright eyes full of innocence. The father, weary but gentle in demeanor, was carefully stirring his coffee when he noticed the woman standing alone. He watched her for a moment. Her trembling hands trying to keep hold of the tray, the way she bit her lip to hide the rising shame, the quiet plea in her eyes that no one seemed willing to answer. Something about her posture, fragile yet enduring, struck a chord within him. He knew that look. He had worn it himself during the hardest years, when kindness from a stranger could mean the difference between despair and hope. Without hesitation, he leaned forward slightly, raising his hand in a subtle but welcoming wave. His voice carried a warmth that cut through the noise of the cafe as he called out gently, "There's room here. Please, sit with us." The woman froze, her eyes widening as if she wasn't sure he was speaking to her. But his daughter turned eagerly, smiling brightly and sliding her plate closer to make space. The man's invitation wasn't forced, it wasn't charity, it was simple humanity, freely given. For the first time that day, the woman felt seen. Slowly, cautiously, she stepped toward their table, hope flickering where only humiliation had lived moments before. She placed her tray on the table with trembling hands, offering a small, uncertain smile as she sat down. For a moment, silence hung between them, broken only by the chatter of the cafe around them. The woman lowered her gaze, unsure of what to say, afraid her presence might be a burden. Then, the little girl leaned forward, her eyes shining with innocent curiosity. Without hesitation, she slid her half-eaten cookie across the table. "You can have some if you want," she said cheerfully, her voice light and genuine. The woman's lips parted in surprise, her heart tightening at the simple gesture. She chuckled softly, shaking her head. "That's very sweet of you. Thank you." The father smiled, watching the tension melt from her face. He asked her gently how her day had been, his tone kind, without judgment. At first, her answers were short, almost whispered. But as the minutes passed, the warmth of their company began to ease the heaviness she carried. The little girl giggled as she told a story about her school project, waving her small hands animatedly. The woman laughed for the first time in weeks, an unsteady laugh, but real. The three of them talked in quiet, easy tones, sharing bits of themselves as though they had known each other far longer than a few minutes. The cafe, once a place of rejection and loneliness, suddenly felt softer, warmer. In the simple company of a father and his child, the woman found herself slowly stepping out of the shadows of isolation she had been trapped in. The laughter faded into a softer silence, and for the first time, the woman's smile wavered. She took a deep breath, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup as though gathering the courage to speak. Her voice trembled when she finally said, "I almost didn't come in here today." The father glanced at her with quiet patience, his daughter tilting her head curiously. The woman's eyes glistened as she continued, each word pulling at the weight she had been carrying. "I lost my job a few months ago, and since then, it feels like everything has fallen apart. I haven't called my family because I don't want them to worry, and most days I can't even face people. Today I thought maybe a little coffee would help me feel normal again. But when no one let me sit, it just reminded me how invisible I've become." Her voice cracked, and she quickly wiped at the tears threatening to fall. The tray sat untouched before her, the steam from her cup fading just as her hope had moments ago. "I just needed someone, anyone, to see me," she whispered. The father's eyes softened, his expression carrying a quiet understanding. His daughter, sensing the heaviness in her words, reached across the table with her tiny hand and placed it gently on the woman's. That innocent touch, so small yet so full of love, broke the silence with more comfort than words ever could. For the first time in a long while, the woman felt she wasn't completely alone. Someone had listened. Someone cared. And that realization was enough to make her tears fall freely. The woman sat with tears glistening on her cheeks, but this time they didn't feel like the tears of defeat, there was something lighter in them, something almost cleansing. The father gave her a gentle smile, the kind that spoke of quiet resilience and understanding. "Sometimes the world forgets," he said softly, "but one act of kindness can remind us that we still belong." His daughter nodded, her small hand still resting in the woman's, as if sealing the truth of his words. In that moment, the woman felt a warmth spread through her chest, a reminder that even in the darkest times, a single gesture could spark hope. The three of them sat together, sharing silence that was no longer awkward but comforting, like a fragile bond forming between strangers who had crossed paths at exactly the right time. The woman finally picked up her cup, taking a slow sip, her trembling easing into calm. For the first time in months, the coffee tasted different, it tasted like belonging. When she finally rose to leave, she thanked them both, her voice steadier than before. The little girl beamed up at her and said, "Come sit with us again next time." That simple invitation felt like a gift, one she carried out of the cafe with a renewed heart. As the door closed behind her, she realized that kindness had given her something she thought she had lost forever, hope. And as she walked away, she knew she would never forget the day a single dad and his daughter made her feel seen again.